to the How to Spark Success podcast show. I'm your host, Liz Hamlet, and I'm a success coach and business mentor, and I'm founder of Spark Succeed. And in this podcast, I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners, thought leaders, and people doing amazing things all around the globe. So today I'm delighted to welcome a guest from Perth, who is the author of Thriving Mind, How to Cultivate a Good Life. She's also written many amazing books, Smarter, Sharper Thinking, Brain Fit and Brain Smart, and she runs workshops and coaches through Brain Fit, and she's helping to create thriving teams and leaders. So I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Jenny Brockis. Hi Jenny, how are you?
Hi Liz, I'm really well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's great to be with you.
It's brilliant. So we met, didn't we, through being on the cheer squad for the launch of Janine Garner's book, Be Brilliant. But we got chatting, and I was really interested to hear all the amazing stuff that you're doing, especially as you're a fellow English woman who is now living in Perth. So it'd be really interesting if you could tell us a bit about, your background, how you, your career journey, and how you got to do what you're doing today.
Well, thanks, Liz. My background is I was born in York, which I believe entitles me to be part of the Yorkshire cricket team. Not that I've ever been invited, and I don't think I will, because my visuospatial skills are appalling. If I hit the ball, that's a win, but it won't go straight. So having come from Yorkshire, I actually spent most of my childhood in Surrey. My dad was a vet, so we had quite an eclectic sort of household. It was always full of animals as well as the family. And I knew from an early age that I was never going to be a vet because I thought I can't handle sick animals. It's one thing to deal with people, but not sick animals. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I liked all sorts of different subjects at school, had no idea what I was really going to end up in. And I was actually advised by the school counsellor to do agriculture.
Yeah, wow.
And I think the only place I could have gone to do that was Bangor in Wales. And it didn't actually appeal very much. I've never been to Bangor, so maybe it would have been a wonderful place, but I really didn't want to do agriculture. So I ended up doing a nursing degree in London. And that was great, but I quickly realised that my heart wasn't in nursing per se. I actually discovered that I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be the one making the decisions. And so I applied to get into medical school, which to my amazement, I got into Bristol, which was fantastic because it's such a beautiful city. And I loved my time there, and then qualified as a doctor. And in the same breath, I had visited Australia as a medical student for my elective, and I'd actually been to Perth and the far north of Northwest Australia. I came back, did my finals, got married, and then did my first house job down in Truro in Cornwall, just to be a bit different. So my first 6 months of married life was spent apart from my husband. But anyway, we're still married all these years later. And then he got headhunted by an Australian company here in Perth. And he said, "What do you reckon?" And I said, "Well, I think we could give it a go for a year or two." Well, several decades later, we are still here. We've had a family. I set up a general practice of my own, which I would never have had the opportunity to do in the UK, and had our kids and everything like that. And then over a bit of time, I became a bit frustrated that I always felt I was putting band-aids on people. I wasn't really getting to the nitty-gritty of what was leading them to become sick in the first place. So I started exploring what they used to call complementary medicine. And then I actually suffered burnout. I was completely exhausted. I had to leave my practice, said goodbye. Which was heartbreaking because, when it's your own business and you've set it up and got it going really well, and then to have to walk away from it, it was heartbreaking. But I had to take time out. I took 12 months off to recover, which everybody goes, what, 12 months? But yeah, it really did take me 12 months. And then it was like, well, what are you going to do now? And the only thing I did know was that going back into general practice probably wasn't the best idea, because the risk was I'd fall back into the same hole of overwork, overwhelm, overcommitment, and end up in the same space again. And I didn't want to do that to my family or my children or myself. So I had to sort of think, well, what is it that I'm here on this planet to do? And while initially I didn't want to do anything related to medicine, I came full circle and decided, well, actually what I really wanted to do was to help people in the workplace who were suffering from high stress, exhaustion, toxic relationships, because I think we've all had a few people that we go to work with that we really don't get on very well with, and how to sort of elevate our own performance, how to think clearly when we're under pressure, because I think everybody today is just so under the pump. We're dealing with so many different competing things. It's really difficult. And so I set up my company, Brain Fit, and started talking about brain health, which everybody was interested in because the neuroscience was quite new at that stage. And then I introduced some positive psychology along with that as well. And today I specialise in lifestyle, because I've qualified as a lifestyle medicine physician, mental well-being, and oh my goodness, there's so much struggle out there at the moment, and psychological safety at work. So I've sort of bobbed and weaved, if you like, over the years to find this place where I am now, and it's great. Yeah. Because I've always come from this place of wanting to be of service to help other people, and this has enabled me to do that. And moving away from general practice, as painful as it was at the time, actually freed me up, provided me the opportunity to look outside the box and think, well, how can I do this differently? Because in general practice, obviously, it's one-on-one. And I knew that I had to get the message out to more people. And the only way I could do that was by running workshops, speaking at conferences, which also meant I had to learn how to speak publicly. That was a challenge too, because by nature, I'm actually quite quiet and quite introverted. And I was always the sort of person who in school would go bright red if the teacher asked me a question and try and hide under the desk. So it took a lot of courage to actually step up and step out and gradually learn to love speaking with people, because I came to understand it's nothing about me. It's all about what you're sharing with the other person to transform them in some way and to help them in whatever aspect of their life or their work they're trying to sort out.
I think that's, really interesting what you were saying about your experiences with burnout. And I'm sort of really interested in that, because I myself in the past, I've had to have, time off work because of burnout and stress. And, I feel that has led me to the place where I am now, where I want to work with people. I want to support people to sort of be their best selves and, coach them and mentor them. And I'm sure, how are you finding that you're bringing that experience into sort of what you're doing in group settings and, the speaking element? How has that sort of influenced, and how are you able to use that in your sharing of experiences?
Well, the caveat I have to add here is that initially I didn't share it. I kept very quiet. I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I feared being judged. And that was there for a long time, until I started talking about it a bit more openly to some friends. And they said, Jenny, wow, you have to share this story, because if people get to realize that anybody can be affected by mental distress, mental illness, burnout, exhaustion, because you're human like everybody else, that is actually really empowering. So I took a deep breath and started weaving it into my keynotes, and it just went off. People would come up and say, Jenny, it was as if you were talking to me. I know exactly where you've been. I've experienced the same. And we would sort of, have quite sort of deep and meaningful conversations. And I could see that it was actually going to be a very powerful adjunct to just help people to understand they're not alone. There is always support out there, and it really sort of, it acted as a bit of a catalyst in some ways. But I'm also cognizant that just because somebody has experienced a challenging time, and I guess we all have,
yeah,
at some point, I mean, life's like that, right? But you don't have to face adversity in order to be able to share with people some great stuff to help others. It's just that my own experience with burnout has been useful in what I'm helping other people to deal with in terms of their own relationships and their own mindset and their ways of thinking. Because one thing I learned as a GP was that regardless of the illness that a person was dealing with, it was very much their attitude towards the illness itself and the support network they had that made the biggest difference of all. If they had the mindset of, well, I'm going to work with this and you're there to support me, plus they had a loving, supportive family around them, they did far better than those who are either alone for whatever reason, or had the mindset of, well, this is terrible, this is awful, and I'm just going to die. Because basically we actually fulfill that thought pattern, which sounds a bit grotesque, but it's true. Those people who basically gave up didn't do as well for as long as those people who said, no, I'm going to do what I can to recover as best I can. And I think, you know, we're funny creatures. When we're under a lot of pressure, when we're under stress, the first thing that often goes out the window, and I don't know if it's true for you, is that our self-care packs its bags and has left the building at the time that we need it the most. So it's those people that can hang on to that routine of knowing what actually makes them feel a bit better, what actually gives them a bit of energy, what gives them joy, makes the biggest difference.
And I think that sharing piece is really interesting to hear what you were saying about, you know, feeling like you couldn't really share that message that you yourself had been through this and had to have, you know, 12 months off, you know, and I totally, you know, get that. I mean, I know that in Australia recently, I think it was last month, you had the Are You OK campaign all about mental health and asking other people. And I saw that there was one very big firm, I think in Sydney, that had got a lot of its sort of senior execs up in front of, you know, staff to talk about their own mental health, you know, challenges or experiences. And I think that was really powerful to understand that, you know, anyone can go through this. And, you know, that it's okay to not be okay and to talk about that, particularly at the moment. I'm sure you're seeing sort of in your group work, I imagine you're doing a lot online at the moment, that people are experiencing things in a very different way at the moment in their work in, you know, isolation, or the challenges come with juggling home and work at home. So have you seen the impacts that has had on, you know, the people that you're working with?
Basically, the overall level, I mean, it's not true for everybody, but those people who've been more adversely affected, the overall level of stress that they're holding is just much higher. And as a consequence, they're often experiencing more anxiety. And the surveys that are coming out, and it's too early to have data yet, but certainly the initial data suggests that, especially in the first few months when the pandemic hit, the level of anxiety in our society just went whoop, and the level of depression started climbing as well. Since that time, it's sort of dropped off a little bit as people have sort of got more used to the new way of doing. But what's worrying me now is that I'm seeing more people who are just exhausted from coping with everything, because they've been holding it all together for so long, but there's no end in sight. Every time we think, oh, there's a little window of opportunity, maybe things are getting better, and then the next barrow load of bad news arrives, plonk, and it's like, oh. And that was particularly evident in Melbourne recently, because Australia had done pretty well overall compared to other countries, And then all of a sudden we had this outbreak in Victoria, in Melbourne itself, which rapidly got out of control. And everybody sort of drew breath and went, and Melbourne was put back under lockdown. Now, they'd only just come out of lockdown a couple of weeks before that, and people had dealt with that. But going in for the second time, it really brought people down. And speaking with people who were living in Melbourne, I just got that sense of, there was despair, there was more despondency. It was like, oh, this is going to go on and I don't like it. One Powerball, get me out of here now. It's not been good. It's been very, very hard. And of course, the rest of us around the other parts of Australia have been looking on thinking, oh my goodness, we feel so bad for people in Melbourne, and then feeling, well, thank goodness we're sort of relatively okay as is. But there's a lot of exhaustion, and I see going forward, we are just facing a new epidemic of mental health challenges. And interestingly, I was reading an article just yesterday, and some mental health experts are saying, you know what, after this is all over, we are going to be dealing with a lot of people with a new medical condition that is mental health challenge relevant just to dealing with COVID-19. So it's going to be a bit like a post-traumatic stress disorder. And the issue is, and I don't know what it's like for you in the UK, pre-COVID, the mental health service really was grossly inadequate, grossly underfunded. People, even if they did put their hand up, couldn't necessarily access the help they needed in a timely fashion. I mean, it's one thing to get an appointment with your GP, that's a good start. But if you needed anything more than that, obviously you could be put on medication if appropriate. And I think between you and me, I think the entire population of Australia is currently on medication. I don't know, but that's the feeling I get. But if you want to see a specialist, or if you need psychological counselling, it's getting harder and harder to actually access their services, because there's only a finite number of them around, and they're fully booked for the next 2 months, 3 months, or beyond. So if they were struggling before COVID, and we've seen a doubling of psychological distress in the last 6 months, go figure. The government's putting more money into the system, but I don't think that's the answer. What I do think is that we've just got to take charge ourselves and really embrace the idea of mental well-being, where instead of saying, oh, I think you've got anxiety, oh, I think you've got depression, oh, I think you've got a psychosis going on, it's more about, what can I be doing on a daily basis that's going to help keep me safe, keep me well, and keep me at lower risk of developing a mental health disorder. So I think moving forward, that's where we need to be heading. And there's so much opportunity to do that, because it's simple, it's stuff we already know, which we're just not doing. And it's something that we can incorporate into our daily lives. I think one thing a lot of people have shared, that during lockdown, people couldn't travel, they didn't have the commute, they spent more time at home with families. And for some people, that wasn't always the best thing since sliced bread, but for other people, they loved it. They loved the fact they didn't have this travel time. They loved the fact they could spend more time at home, or they could actually go out for a walk and do all these simple activities, which actually made them feel better. And I think because of that sort of awakening, if you like, that has brought about this feeling that many people have said to me, you know what, Jenny, I don't want to go back to how it was before. It was awful. I mean, I did it because I had to, but now I'm not so sure that's really what I want for myself, my family, and my future. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all pans out.
Yeah, definitely. And I've definitely seen a sort of influx of new clients to me who have taken that time in lockdown, where they've perhaps had that little bit more time to sort of reflect on what they're doing, reflect on their career, you know, reflect on whether that is, you know, in the next 1 to 5 years, is that where they want to be? Is that going to offer them the opportunities? And I think, you know, if they're caught up in the busyness of sort of normal life and commute, I don't know if they would have had that chance to sort of
No.
reflect on that. So sort of turning the conversation on its head. So we've talked about for you sort of the openness of sort of discussing, you know, your background, and also sort of resilience and sort of creating opportunity. What do you think has been the biggest factor in your success?
Oh, I think I'm fairly determined. I'm fairly obstinate. I can be quite single-minded when I need to be. So, because I believe so passionately in what I'm doing, it's really kept me focused and on track. If I didn't have that belief, then who knows what I would have ended up doing. I might have gone and got a job somewhere. I don't know. I have no idea. But I have always held tightly to the notion that this is really important. I can help make a difference to some people. I just need to keep on chipping away little by little to help people to get the messages out there. And 10 years ago, when I first started doing this, I felt like the lonely voice in a crowd. There was nobody else really talking about it, and people were saying, brain fit, what do you mean by that? And they didn't really get what I was trying to get across. Yeah. Now it's like, oh, we really want to know more about what we can do to feel better about ourselves, to get more out of life, because it isn't just about work. And they're really seeking ways to integrate it more into their lives and saying, how do I do this? Because my schedule is back to back all through the week. And I say, okay, well, let's rewind and sort of look at what we can be doing differently, and how you can be thinking differently about how you manage your time and your energy. And we do it that way. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and it's only just getting really going now, which is good.
Exciting time, and you're in the right place at the moment to be able to support people. Absolutely.
Yes.
What would you say on a sort of daily, weekly basis are your success habits that sort of keep you going and sort of work for you?
My biggest success habit was marrying my husband.
Oh, fantastic.
He has been my rock through absolutely everything. He's an amazing guy. So lucky to have him. And he's always been there, no matter what. If I've been a bit down or a bit cheesed off, he's always been the one to sort of pick me up and say it's going to be okay. And if I've been, you know, doubting for a little while, because I mean we're all human, right? I'm not sure that I can do this because I'm just tired all the time. He would say, no, okay, just take a bit of time off and then sort of think about it and see how you go. And he's always been there. So that is the biggest factor for me. But it's also learning the self-awareness piece about what I need in order to be the best version of myself. And these are all the things that I never did as a GP. I used to tell other people what to do all day long. I should have heeded my own good advice. Like, you know, I always make sure I get out for a walk at least. We've got dogs, so they always are ready to go out for the next walk. Incorporating exercise into my daily routine. Mindfulness meditation has been my go-to if my mind's getting a bit overloaded and I just need to calm down. I find that is a fantastic way just to go, ooh, I feel so much better. And I'm also very conscious of the food I choose to eat. I know that when the pressure's on and I'm feeling more stressed, that's when the corn chips come out. And I know that I feel so much better if I'm following my usual diet, which is more whole foods, plant-based, and cut out all the processed rubbish. Yeah. So, but we are our own worst enemies. And I know that, you know, if I indulge in corn chips for a bit or have an extra glass of wine, no, the world is not going to stop spinning, but it's not going to be helpful in the long term if I stick to just a corn chips and wine diet.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be a lot of fuel for all the energy that you need in your work.
No, no.
So if you could sort of start all over again, what would you do differently, if anything?
The one thing I probably wouldn't have done is take on, I took on a new business partner just before I had my burnout. And it was because I was tired, because I was desperate for some support in running the business. And I didn't care who it was. So when one of my associates put his hand up and said, I want to be your partner, Jenny, I didn't actually ask the question, was this a good idea? Yeah. Because it wasn't. He was totally, we were poles apart in our value system, our belief systems, everything. And, you know, it's the only person who was at fault for allowing that to happen was me, because I didn't ask the questions. And, you know, even my staff said, are you sure about this, Jenny? And I just thought, I've got to have a partner. I just need someone to shoulder the burden. And it didn't work. It didn't work. So that's probably the only thing I would change. And I think with hindsight, if I had been made better able to manage manage my burnout better. Can you do that? I'm not sure. If I'd been able to manage the stress that was contributing to the burnout better, I think that I would have had a completely different outcome. What's interesting about that, though, is that I probably would still be in general practice today. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to become the person that I have become as a consequence. And I think that's a shame, because I've learned so much more about myself in the process.
Yeah, I'm definitely a true believer in those things that you would change actually are the things that have driven you to do what you do now, and like perhaps change direction or sort of change focus and, you know, like take some time out. And, you know, during that time, I'm sure you sort of realize actually these are the parts that I do like, these are the parts that I don't, and able to sort of craft something that's more suitable. So I think that's great. Yeah. And I'm sure you've sort of received quite a lot of advice over your time, or heard a lot of advice. So what would you say has been the best piece of advice that you've received about sort of success in your career?
The best piece of success was to look at my own definition of what success is for me. Because traditionally I'd been brought up to believe that success was leading a professional life that was fulfilling, that enabled me to enjoy a certain level of income and enjoy the fruits of that, you know, with a nice car or a nice house, etc. And I think the advice I received, and this came from a mentor, and I started working with a mentor probably 15 years ago. I've had a series of different mentors, but it's been the mentoring which has been gold, because they challenge your thinking and make you sort of redefine things. And it was that challenge to what does success look like for you that I realized that success for me isn't about all the fruits. I don't really care about the car. I mean, it's nice to have a nice house, but that's not what drives me. To me, success is when I know I've made a positive difference to someone else. I don't have to influence the world. I'm not looking for global domination, or perhaps I am, but no, I'm not. But if I know that in my own small way, I have made a positive difference, that to me is success.
Perfect. And I know, you know, it's obvious that you're really passionate about what you're doing, and, you know, you're sharing a lot of what other people are doing, which is fantastic. You're very active on LinkedIn and, you know, social media. So, you know, that message is getting out, and, you know, it's great to hear that companies are really seeing the benefit of speaking to people like you to like sell about the sort of self-care and sort of mental well-being piece, and I think, you know, that's fantastic. So continue doing what you're doing and hopefully one day we'll meet up in the UK or in Australia.
That would be great. That would be fabulous. I would love that. I can't get over to the UK at the moment. I'm not allowed to leave West Australia, but one day we'll be given permission again to travel.
I've got a lot of people to catch up on from the podcast in Australia, so maybe I'll do a road trip round.
That'll be great. We'll just charter a flight and we'll just all come over together. How about that? We'll come stay at your place.
Yeah, exactly. So if people want to find out a bit more about your work, where's the best place for them to go?
Best place is probably my website, which is my name. So it's Dr Jenny Brockis, DR for Dr, Jenny with a Y, and Brockis is spelt BROCKIS.com. So you can find out all about me there, or you can email me, and it's jenny@drjennybrockis.com. So I've kept it simple. It's very straightforward to find me if you want to. And I love hearing from people. So if anybody's got any questions, or they want clarification about something that we've spoken about, happy to hear from people. And that's the beauty of technology, isn't it? We can connect around the world so easily. And that's great because, I mean, I know you're in the UK, I've got family in the UK. And while I used to sort of say, don't spend too long, oh, sorry about the phone, don't spend too long on technology because it's bad for you. I remember my parents saying you get square eyes if you watch too much television, but I'm so grateful that we've got this technology, because tell you what, it would have made dealing with lockdown and the social restrictions that have been put in place so much harder. And in many ways, I've naturally spent more time communicating with both my brothers and my mother in the UK since March than I've ever done before. And I think, isn't that wonderful? It's great.
Yeah, and it does make it, I mean, we've got family over in New Zealand and, friends in Melbourne, lockdown, and, elsewhere in Australia. And, it is difficult, not knowing when you're going to see people. But I think, that technology definitely, makes it easier. So I'll make sure that all your links are included in the show notes, so people can just click straight through. And also there's information on all your books on your website. So if anyone wants some reading about thriving minds and, brain fit and brain smart, then they can head through your website. So thank you so much, Jen. It's been great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Liz. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Brilliant. And for listeners here today, if you join me for the next episode, I'll be joined by Ashley Pollock, who is the co-founder of Cyber Alarm and ETIO, which is a video agency. But he also created, during lockdown, almost in 24 hours, lockdowngardener.co.uk, which was providing plants to people at their homes, sort of delivering, and it's created this business out of nothing. So I'd be really interested to hear about how he did that and how they're finding business with that particular side of the business. And if you've been inspired by what you've heard today in our conversation, you'd like to book a call with me, you can head over to sparksucceed.co.uk and book in a free consultation and chat about your needs and see how I can help. So thank you so much, Jen. It's been fantastic to have you.
Thank you so much, and you take care, Liz.
And you can go off to your corn chips and wine now. Sorry, apple. No, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Take care.